What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. It's episode 620. We are presented by TickPick.com. You ever hear of TickPick?
I love TickPick.
Do you?
Yes.
Why do you love TickPick?
It's just so easy, convenient.
It's easy, it's convenient, and there are no hidden fees. Use that promo code capital OSHOW20 for $20 off your next order. Again, it's episode 620 of the podcast, guys, with Brant Pinvidic. He's an author, The 3-Minute Rule. He's a former Hollywood producer. He's a father, adventurer, Canadian. In no particular order. He's here. He got dinner at Hell's Kitchen with his daughter last night, who's here filming us right now. Thank you guys so much for dropping by before you head back.
Very excited to chat.
And you guys are based in Los Angeles now.
Yeah, been there for about 20 years now.
20 years, and that's from, is that from
Canada.
British Columbia?
Canada, yeah.
So, and you always talk, I was telling you right before we came on, you, Van Vliet, any Canadian I've ever met, it fits the stereotype. You guys are the nicest people in the world. And you said that it's the Canadians that get out of Canada and move to the United States.
Yes, because we're so happy. We're so happy to get out, and makes us, all our goodness comes out then.
You always said, like, when you first got into producing and pitching ideas and, pitching show ideas specifically, it wasn't until you came here, you came to LA, where people were like, these ideas are great. Let's work on them. Let's kind of workshop these, where in Canada, you didn't really get a break.
Yeah, it wasn't even the ideas itself. It was the idea of having big ideas. Yeah. In Canada, is like, stop doing that. That's just dumb. Why would you try that?
Why?
I think it's just a cultural thing. It's just, I have a joke that I use that I will now bequeath on you. Like during that whole time when, England was like, hey man, you belong to America, you belong to us. And America's like, no way, we're going to be independent. And guys are getting their muskets and leaving their homes with no cell phones and like, bye honey and kids, I'm going to go fight the British, the largest empire in the world. And hopefully I'll come back with freedom. There was 188,000 people that were like, very adventurous, very industrious, that left England on the boat and came here and set up shop, but they weren't adventurous enough or stand up enough to stay and fight the British. They're like, nah, that's too much for us. And they fled to Canada. And so you have a like high level adventurous people, but not quite level. And that, I think that transferred into the culture of Canada, where it's like, yeah, we're still awesome, but just not that awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of where the Canadian sort of status quo is a little bit more valued than being out there, and potential in the United States and advantageous stuff is just so revered here, and it's not like that in Canada.
Was it like night and day when you got here?
Night and day.
Really?
I mean, night and day. Like, it's like I found my people. It's like, this is where I was supposed to be. This is where I fit. And when that happens, it's a life-changing moment. And I think for a lot of people in their situation right now, where they're at, what they're doing, they are in the situation by whatever happenstance, and then they try to make the best of that situation. And what they don't realize is that if you find the right situation, everything works better. If you find your people, they will support you with what you're supposed to be doing, what you want to be doing. Mm-hmm. And I think America for me was that.
On that subject, because that's a very finding your people, finding your right environment for everything to click. Is that something you have to go out and find? I mean, that's part of it, but like also at the same time, people kind of like cultivate into your life, and that's how it kind of
I think
works, right?
I think the biggest piece is comfort. Yeah. If you're okay with being a little uncomfortable and going and trying new things and meeting new people and expanding, you will find bigger, better things out there. And I consult with a lot of people, and ironically, in the entertainment industry has probably had the most big change over the last years, where people coming to me after I wrote the book and left the entertainment industry as a day-to-day job. It's most of the people outside of the entertainment ask me, oh, how do you get into entertainment? And how do you get into that? People in entertainment go, how do I get out? How do I get out with you? Right. And so what I say to them, and what I say to a lot of people, is that when you're in the mode you're in, you're like a radio, right? You're tuned to a certain frequency. You only hear opportunities in that frequency. And once you get out of that pattern and you're out into the real world and you open yourself up, you realize that like you're tuning that dial to hear other things, to meet other people, to see other opportunities. And I think that's something that people just don't appreciate enough, because they get very comfortable and very insular where they're at.
Mm-hmm. And it's so difficult for people to realize that too. Like the other spectrum of that is I've noticed a lot of people, especially with social media today, it's like people are living lives that look good as opposed to feel good.
Right.
And then surrounding themselves with people that look good
Yeah.
on camera and look good on the surface for all of your followers to see, as opposed to you actually like enjoying
Yeah,
yourself.
and it's funny because people always say like I film so much and I post so
Yeah.
much. I'm like, oh man, I don't post very much at all. And like I'm so in the mode of doing fun things, and in that mode, like I don't really capture it all that well, and I don't put enough video together anymore. And that's sort of from my perspective of kind of retiring from the day to day. It's like I don't really have anything to sell anymore. Like I don't need to sell any more books. It's great. You like the book. That's fantastic. I got clients. I don't have anything to sell, so I don't have anything to promote. So I'm not really trying as hard as I really could.
Yeah.
And like I do more in real life than I actually even share.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know. I share a lot.
Because you're actually enjoying it though, right?
Yeah. And it's like, well, on my Instagram stories, I share a lot. So maybe that's not true, but
Instagram stories are easy.
That's the thing.
It's just like, snap a picture, it's up, everybody sees it.
Yeah.
Mostly all your followers will see your story as opposed to an actual post. Like it just gets lost in the feed.
I know,
anyway.
it's so bad. Like I don't post anywhere else but my Instagram story right now.
Yeah. And it's crazy because you do all of these different types of adventures, right?
Yeah.
And you'll invite people to come on. Like you have like an email list of people that just like invite. Have you met anybody on those trips that you didn't really necessarily know too well before that you've developed?
Oh, it happens all the time. All the time, because somebody will bring somebody, will bring somebody, will bring somebody. And then I have just the plain fun ones. And then I have more of an executive side of it. So it's this sort of organization I put together called Reject Average. And it's basically just to go out and do fun things and experience cool stuff. So I will go and put together interesting adventures. Like I chartered the boat that does Shark Week.
Yep.
For just my group, I took 18 execs out there and we went and dived with great white sharks for 5 days. Like super cool. We do like an exotic car rally, but I'll do like a family scavenger hunt at Vasquez Rocks, where I'll go the day before. My daughter went and we planted all these cool codes around the rocks, and you and your family. Like I will just do stuff that is fun and interesting that you can just immerse yourself into and be like, I would not have done that in my normal day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been really fun for me. And so then when I do the executive side, it's like, hey, I curate 7 or 8 or 12 high-level executives from various industries that I think would be interesting together, and then put them together and do like a little mastermind thing. And that spurs more people coming in. And
now, was it more about like a passion thing to start, and then you realized, oh, this could be a little bit on the business side too when inviting
it's all
certain
nonprofit.
executives?
I don't do it as a business at all, because that would rob me of joy. Like I do it for joy. I'm a little bit of a performer. I like to entertain. So as my narcissist sort of grows, it's like I say I'm a benevolent narcissist, right? I like everything to be about me, but I like making it about me by doing nice things for other people. And then I get to be the hero. I get to put on my cape and swoop in and be like, hey, I put this adventure together for people. So that's where I derive joy, right? Is from that moment. So once you turn that into a business side of it, then you sacrifice the joy you get from providing this to people for exchange for, monetary gain. And so right now there isn't enough gap there for me in my world, in my space, and what I'm into in life. There's not enough monetary gain to justify sacrificing joy. And in fact, I kind of go the other way of like, if you come on an adventure and you rob me of some of my joy, you are rejected. You don't get to come back again. Right. And so, and that's happened. There are people that just have a different sort of operating frequency about how things go. For me, it's just like, I put the adventure together. I spend whatever it costs to get. I split it up with the people that go there. It's close. Usually I just end up paying money every year for people to have fun, but I don't mind because I have a blast.
Yeah. How much research goes into some of the stuff? Like swimming with great whites is something that you probably have to do your due diligence on and be like, is this safe?
Well, and that's been the interesting side of it, because the amount of research and energy and effort that goes into it is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. But I'm a producer by trade. Like I don't know any other system. There is no other version. And I explain to people, it's like, well, you know how live TV for the last 50 years, like you could barely point to anything going wrong ever. Oh, Janet Jackson's boob popped out. Like there's one incident. And it's because in my world, there is no other option. It must work. The NBA game starts at 7:15. There is no other version. So if you're at the Staples Center, that hard court is ready. And so my world is like that. So when I plan an adventure, it's like it gets done properly. Everything's in place. And so I'm just very detailed about that. So it takes a goofy amount of work. But I love that part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. And what about the people you mentioned that there's been a few people that you're just like, you weren't invited back because they weren't giving you the energy that you probably needed? Like, was it just that they just weren't having fun, or they were looking at it from a different angle? Like,
no, it's more like they cancel at the last minute.
That happens all the time.
And I'm like, yo, I spent a ton of money, and time and energy. Like, how am I going to do that? So we went on this big ski trip. I got a plane. I rent this, and there was supposed to be 6 of us going, right? Well, a 6-bedroom condo in Mammoth, very hard to find. 5-bedroom, you can get those.
Right.
6, big difference. These are not people that I expect to be sharing rooms, kind of thing. And so I finally got a 6-bedroom. So then the guy cancels. Oh man, I got this other thing coming up, so I'm not going to be able to make it. I was like, really? Because what am I going to do? Call the other 4 or 5 guys and be like, hey, guess what? Jimmy didn't want to go, so now we all have to split this cost of this 5 ways instead of 6 ways.
Right.
Sorry, I know you don't know him, but now it's cost you more. So I just eat that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jimmy doesn't get to come. That's not his name, but he doesn't get to come back, right? Like that's a joy robbing. You robbed me of joy, and now I have things planned for 6, and that's happened a couple times. You can be out on that, and so there's little things like that where it's just like I just want to have fun and enjoy stuff.
Now, on the topic of not having a good time, you're in an RV with your entire family for, touring all 48, 51 states, whatever. Yeah. There's probably times where they're just driving you nuts. There's probably times where he drives you nuts. No? Really? You guys are just like on the same page all the time?
Yeah, we had an amazing time. It was a life-changing. No, there's only
not
50,
everybody's like that.
There's only 50 states, but we went to all 48 in the contiguous United States. In an RV, we spent 6 months, and we drove. We moved every 3 days. We did about 26,000 miles. We did 87 different cities.
Wow.
And met 142 different unique people that we took to dinner in our sort of Dinner with America. Right. And what was interesting is that because there was a mission involved, like we had to go to every state, we had to go to these places. We were very unified as a family in that sense. And it was interesting because the kids were able to understand, like, in the morning you do whatever you're going to do, but in the afternoon we go have fun. Like that is what we do. We go to explore. We're going to go to a restaurant that night. We're going to go meet people. That is the plan. So I watched my kids kind of grow into this personality of like, they're prepared to go have fun that day. Yeah. Like that's their mission. And when we meet people, they knew we had to go meet a stranger. So they would, not to talk about Brianna, like she's not in the room, but she had a lot of anxiety as a teenager. She was very shy with sort of adults. And then through the trip, you could see the evolution where it was like they were able to tell their stories of the trip. People were so interested that they became more comfortable with the story because they've told the same story 7 times, 9 times, 12 times. So they were better at telling it. They saw the reactions people get, and they started to enjoy that sense of it. And I remember we were in a water park in Wisconsin, probably the worst water park you could ever possibly go to. It was packed with people. You couldn't find a chair. The lineups were 2 hours. It's the largest water park in North America, but that's because it's just on so much land. It's not like it has that many more rides. And I was like, oh my God, this is the worst thing. I'm not a big fan of amusement parks anyways. So I just sort of hung back, and I was like, I'm not going to like make my kids miserable by being miserable. I'm just going to just hang there. And I watched my kids find ways to have fun. Like they were out there to enjoy themselves. And so they were judging the experience on their predetermined notion that I'm going to enjoy this.
Yeah.
And so by any subjective or objective criteria, it was not a good time that day. But by the time they left, they were like, yeah, that was fun. We had a good time. And I just was so perplexed by that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when my daughter sort of helped me come up with this new thing that I'm in the new book will be this sort of created nostalgia. Whereas if you think about what nostalgia is the idea of loving something from your past that you used to do, whether it's good or not. And like Brianna will tell you, whether something's good or whether you love it are completely unrelated. You might love something, doesn't make it good. I love Canadian McChickens at McDonald's. I know for a fact they are not good, but I love them, right? And what you find is that human beings are the only species that can have this nostalgic feeling. And you can actually create nostalgic feelings for things you've never done before. Like you don't have to have experienced it and then fall in love with it. Your brain doesn't know the difference. If you have the same patterns of, I am going to, when I go to Canada and I stop at McDonald's, I already know how much I'm going to love these McChickens. It doesn't matter how they cook them. It doesn't matter what the actual taste is. I just know that I'm going to love them, and I leave there with that. And when we went spring break last year, we went to Dollywood in Tennessee. Again, I am not an amusement park fan. And Brianna and I didn't even get to go on any rides. Because it's like, but we already knew we love Dolly Parton. We love Tennessee. We know we love Pigeon Forge. We know we're going to love being at Dollywood. We had already committed to that before we even got there.
Yep.
So we weren't judging the place by the merits, 50-50. Is it good? Is it bad? We were 100% convinced we were going to love this experience. And then so you end up looking for things that confirm that bias, as opposed to trying to judge things on the merits, right?
Yeah.
You already know you're going to have a great time. You're going to find ways to reinforce that. And we left. Did we not leave there, Brianna, being like, that was the greatest thing ever, right?
You look back at it and you're just like, oh, this was awesome. It's like going to like a concert or like a sporting event. Like, let's say you have season tickets for the Lakers.
Yes.
Like, you know what the experience is going to be like, both good, bad, and indifferent.
Yeah.
And sometimes you go to a game and you're just like sitting there like, honestly, like this wasn't really, that great. But looking back at it, it's like, no, that was awesome.
Yeah, and
What
if
a
you
great
went into that
experience.
being like, I love going to the games. I love the experience. This is what I do. Then it's like what actually happens there doesn't influence you as much. You find the pattern. If you are in a bad mood, everything's going to make you upset.
Yep.
If you're in a good mood, it's hard to derail that. And that's sort of the way everything in life sort of travels that way. Where if you commit to having a great time, like last night when we drove 4 hours to go to Hell's Kitchen, and I know I'm going to have this beat Wellington. I love it. I've had it before. There was nothing that could happen at that restaurant last night to be like, that was not good. We were already committed to having the great time, and we had a spectacular dinner. And so that created nostalgia and that attitude. If you practice that process, it becomes more second nature than forced. I get a lot of people in my training that'll be like, but isn't that fake? You're just brainwashing yourself. It's like, it's called training. You are training yourself to have these feelings, to maintain that. And so, you work at it in the beginning and then it becomes more natural.
Man, I know you're Canadian, but you are a very positive person who has, for someone who's worked in Hollywood, producing stuff and pitching ideas for as many years as you did it, for you to be as happy as you are. No bitterness on this guy.
No bitter. Not publicly.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes.
No, that's the worst. But I mean, at what point did you kind of realize, like, is this just you? This is you out of the womb? Like, just optimistic?
I think that, well, I have this thing that I call delusional optimism, right? And I think that was a coping method when I was young and a teenager and picked on or bullied or people calling you names. Like all the things you go through as a teenager, you sort of like have this, I developed this sort of delusional sort of thought that everything's going to be great and everything's fine. And that helped a lot, I think, just get through that piece. And then I find that skill kind of helps when crappy things happen in life and you're like, you just pretend it didn't happen. I remember I got fired from a very big job. I was the head of the TLC network as the head of programming. It was my first big corporate gig, huge job in the industry. I'd only been in the United States for 4 years. It was way out of my league to get that job. But for me, it was like, as an entrepreneur, all my life, it was something of a milestone that a major corporation had put me in a major position. That must mean I'm finally not just faking it anymore.
Exactly.
Or, like someone recognized me. And then to get fired a year later in a disaster was very difficult. And I remember specifically I had lunch on the books with this woman who ran a different network and she canceled lunch. Now that happens all the time. Rescheduling lunch happens all the time. But after I got fired, like I was number 13 on the Hollywood Power list at that time. And the day after I got fired, I wouldn't have been 1,300. Like that's just the way it works.
Yeah.
So when she canceled lunch, I was like, oh my God, no one loves me. I'll never succeed. And I just remember like just turning that corner within like very quickly, within a few weeks of like, it's going to be great. It's amazing. And then everybody I'm talking to is kind of like, oh, it's going to be great. It wasn't a great fit. And I'm so excited about what's next.
Yeah.
Even though internally you're kind of like, oh my God, I'm going to die. But I think that bleeds into your attitude. And I think sometimes I get flack and my family they make jokes about my Instagram voice, right? Like when dad's doing a story, like you can hear his Instagram voice because it's all like, ta-da!
Yeah.
And my wife has always had that issue with like, your persona out there is so up. And it's like, and I was like, yeah, but that's how I stay up, right? Like I make that happen. I live that life. I project that image. I follow that pattern. I find a way to be in that mode so that the opportunities to not be in that mode are very, very slim, very small times when I'm not in that mode. For me, it's like I am up, I am on, I am at my best as much as humanly possible.
And it's almost better that way too, because that's not necessarily like the most authentic version of you, but it's the version of you that everybody's going to see. And that's the version that you want everybody to see. And the more you're like that, the more you're, you and your soul is going to be like.
Well, here, the fundamental question that I have, and in some of my coaching, I talk about this, but the fundamental question I have is like, what do you think comes first, your emotions or your actions? Like, a lot of people live life, if they're having a bad time and a bad day and whatnot, they're not in the mood to go do X, Y, and Z. So they wait for them to feel better about something to then act better. And so a really good friend of mine just went through a very painful breakup, and he's calling me in the middle of the night, and he's all bent out of shape. And I'm sort of telling him to not, act in certain ways. And he's like, but I don't feel that way. And it's like, yeah, but what comes first? What do you think comes first? For me, actions come first. If you want to feel better, go act better. Go do things that are fun and interesting and have conversations and go force yourself to be in that mode and see if it doesn't make you feel like, if you want to get over her, go act like you're over her. Go do the things you would do as someone who had moved past it and didn't wish her horrible things and was in a good place. What would that person act like? What would that person say? How would that person deal with things? Like, if you act like that, my theory is you will start to feel like that. If you wait till you feel over it and better to go act like it, I don't know that you get there. I certainly don't think you get there as fast. No. Now, maybe some psychiatrists and some therapists, people will tell you that is absolutely crazy. I don't know. That's the way I do it. I'm okay. I'm doing okay, I feel like.
No, at the end of the day, you come to that realization anyway. And then you realize you wasted all of that time, and you're just like, like, you were going to probably like breakups, probably one of the hardest things to go through. But like, the quicker you're able to bounce back and be like, all right, I'm going to go out and put myself out there and just do what I want to do instead of sitting here in my thoughts, in my head. Like, your biggest critic is yourself. And at the end of the day, if you're just overthinking things in your head, you're just,
and it's
you're stuck in the mud.
It's a little detachment. Cause I say, like, what would you like to be like perfectly in 6 months or whatever it is? How would you like to feel? How would you like to act? Okay. What would the person that was like that, what would they be doing? Go do those things. See if it doesn't help you become that person, right?
Exactly.
And again, I'm sure some professional out there will be like, that is terrible advice. Explore your feelings and dive into the deep. Maybe. I don't know. I just know that I do a lot of fun stuff. I spend most days trying to find joy and excitement and spread joy to others. And the number of, I would not say I don't have bad days. Like, I have bad hours, a few hours at a time maybe, where I'm kind of like, meh. But man, it's few and far between.
Can't let that ruin your day either. There's so many people that let like one event in a day ruin their entire day.
No,
it's like, I'm just going to go home, have a few drinks, get over this. It's like, oh, that's pretty lousy.
Yeah, and I think everybody could draw a list on a paper, pros and cons, and be like, what are the crappy things going on in my life right now? And like, I could list a bunch. I got lots of stuff that's a pain in the ass, like a ton of stuff. And then you could list other things. It depends, like, which way does your brain lean into? What side of the list does your brain focus on? What is your mind spending time analyzing and diving into? Like, your mind doesn't do well playing both sides of that list, right? And I don't want to play the middle. I don't want to judge life on the merits.
Yeah.
Because it's too risky. It's too, like, everything could be good or bad. And so it's like, I don't want to judge it piece by piece. I already decided I like everything. Yeah. I always was excited to do this podcast because it's going to be great. I knew that before I came here.
That's good.
And everybody told me not to do it. And I still said, no, I'm going to do it anyways.
Like, don't reach out to Brant. He's not going to do it. He's just going to leave you on red. So, but here we are.
Yeah.
Would you so I'm 23. At my age, if you had that mentality, where do you think you'd be at right now? Because again, working as long as you did in producing, to finally come to the realization, it's like, this is not everything. And then to go off and actually do things that you actually enjoy, as opposed to doing things that validated you at the time, right?
This is tough, because it's like, life is a little bit like an ejection seat, right? In a plane. Like, you want to pull the ejection seat at the right time when you have the financial like ability and the wisdom to be able to go enjoy life, right? If you pull it too early, I make the joke all the time, you're a whitewater rafting guide, you're a ski bum, right? Like those guys live great lives. They teach skiing in the wintertime, they whitewater raft in the summertime, but they don't have any money. And so their limited resources affect their future, right? But they start doing that at 20 something years old and they live outdoors and they have the great life. Okay. I have a lot of friends who sell their companies hundreds of millions of dollars and show up at work the next day. And they're 62 years old. And the only thing in life that they do well is work. And those are the extreme ends, right? And so the difficulty is being really good at something you do professionally, using it for an ends to a mean, and knowing when, hey, I don't want to make this profession that I do the only thing that gives me feelings of accomplishment, of power, of joy, of success, right? And that's what human beings, particularly men, are very focused in that world. It was like, I want to feel important. I want to feel valued. I want to feel like I can achieve a goal. I want to feel successful, right? The corporate environment, work, provides people with that. And if you become very good at that, that feeling is there. And so when you're not at work and you're on vacation, it's like you're just an average Joe, right? You're not doing anything special. When you're in the office, you're special. How do you leave that behind, right? How do you, as a guy who's been doing that for the last 40 years, just leave that, right? And when I train, and I train some professional athletes, and that I call it high intensity living, where it's like, if you're an NBA player, you play at the highest intensity when the game's on, and you go and practice at high intensity. Why do football teams practice so hard? And it's not because they need to learn new skills. It's because they need the feeling of intensity to be realistic when they get on the field. But what happens is when they leave that field, they go home and they're average. And they go to a birthday party for the kids and they're average. And they go with their friends, or they go on vacation and they're average. They're not the high intensity that they are in their professional life. And so that personal life ends up feeling less valuable and provides you less. And so what I worked on a lot was, and I work on with clients, is how do you make your personal life feel as intense? How do you feel victory and feel like you've accomplished something in your personal life? And when you go on one of my trips, there's dozens of times where we will be landing at LAX or driving back, and we'll be looking at each other and be like, we won the weekend. Like if there was a prize for best weekend had, like we'd be on the podium, right? And when people say to me, well, don't you ever take a day off and just like do nothing? And it's like, yes, I do that quite a bit. And when I do it at a very high level. If I'm going to take the day off and just sit by the pool and do nothing, I do that at an unbelievably good level. I plan it, I get ready, and then I crush it. And I will go back at the end of the day being like, oh my God, I only went in the house once today. It was amazing, right? If there was a prize for who had the best day lounging by the pool, like there's a good chance I would take the victory. I'd be in the top 10. And if you bring that intensity to your personal life, your professional life, you find that you connect that. It's not work-life balance, right? It's work-life intensity. Like you want those feelings in everything you do. And at your age, the biggest advice is don't worry about the timing right now. Like put the effort in, be consistent. If I had just done one thing consistently, I'd be richer, better experience, and I'd be, in theory, I probably would be in jail or dead by now. But if I had learned these lessons early and just stuck with one thing, my God, like, you know, I'm the master of none kind of thing, and just try everything. So,
well, a lot of people take pride in that too, being like the quote unquote master of none, doing like 12 different things and putting it in their Instagram bios.
It's very hard to be successful at that, because the reason is people who can do that well, myself included, is we can get anything to the 1 yard line, I say. And like in television, I used to do this all the time. And I used to have a sign in my office that said, success is dictated by the projects we don't work on, not the ones we choose. And it's because in television, I would say any idea can be almost a television show.
Yeah.
The difference between getting something to the 1 yard line and getting into the end zone is huge. And what I see a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people that come and I coach is they are good with lots of ideas and they can make anything almost successful. And in the world today, to be high level successful is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy. And you have to be focused and you have to be ready to put that kind of effort in. And so when I see a business that's doing well and they want to branch off into other elements or start a new division, it's just like, why would you want to do that? Like, you are asking for more trouble. And that is a good idea. It's a very good idea, but it doesn't make it a successful project. And that's, you know, if I would have learned that lesson a little earlier and just stuck with something, I'd be 15 years ahead of where I am today.
And it's like you look back at the thing, like you talk about like getting in the end zone with some of these projects. That's what you're going to see looking back at it at the end of the day anyways. You're not going to remember all those 1 yard line projects that didn't really come to fruition. Where like right now you think like, oh yeah, I can do all of that. And
I
think
look
back at it, it's like, I don't even
if you heard
that.
the Chris Van Vliet podcast, like I said, like I speak free to schools and colleges anywhere in the country at any time. And my main thing is you have to have reasonable probabilities of success. You cannot do anything you set your mind to. That is false. And the people that have been telling you that for years are making your life more difficult.
Oh yeah.
If you see Lady Gaga accepting an Academy Award and telling you that people told me no and I pushed past and I just followed my dream, and it's like, you're one of the greatest singers in our time and people told you no and it was incredibly difficult. So it's like, do not tell people that they can make it if they just believe in themselves. That's not the way it works in the world. It doesn't work like that. You need reasonable probability of success. Could you actually make this happen? And and I wrote an article, I write for Forbes, I wrote an article in Forbes when it said sometimes no is not the wrong answer. Sometimes hearing no is good for you. And it doesn't mean that you should just push past it all the time. And it doesn't mean that you should just ignore everybody. They're not all haters. Sometimes that's the real answer. And you have to know the difference between self-doubt and situational doubt. Self-doubt is self-defeating. Situational doubt is self-preserving.
Mm-hmm.
God damn, that's good. Right? Self-doubt is self-defeating. Situational doubt is self-preserving. If you have self-doubt, it's that voice that's always telling you you're not good enough and you can't do it. Mm-hmm. We all have that. We all have imposter syndrome. That you can never get rid of.
Yeah.
You need to learn to sort of silence that and push past that. Situational doubt is the spidey sense that tells you, oh God, this may not work out, or this is not the partner I should be having, or this location probably isn't going to work, or I don't know if people will actually buy this thing. I don't think people really like it. Like, that's telling you doubt about the situation, about the reality. And it's like, if you confuse those two things and you just tell yourself, I just ignore all the negativity, and when I hear I can't do it, I just pretend it's not happening. Well, then you'll not listen to yourself and the other people who are giving you situational doubt and concern, and you'll push past all that. And then, like I said, you'll be that restaurateur who goes into the building that's failed 9 times in a row and has never had a successful restaurant. You'll be the one in there. Yep. You'll be the one that goes bankrupt because you just can't believe that it's not going to work, right?
Yep. Even Lady Gaga, it's like she didn't do it all on her own. Maybe there was like thousands of people that told her she couldn't, but there was also hundreds of people that said, yes, this is going to work. And then a team brought Lady Gaga together and made her Lady Gaga.
It's just not, the amount of things that have to go right, the number of things that have to go right. And it's like the very basics of it is you have to be at that level of talent. End of story. And then even with that, you still have to get unbelievably fortunate and perfect timing and never miss a cue. Like, it's so difficult. Mm-hmm. And so when people choose areas and they want to get into businesses that they don't have the experience, that they're not an absolute professional, but they just have a really good idea, it's kind of like, oh my God, do you know who you're going to be competing with? Like, at some point you're going to have to get in with the big leagues. Like, that's what's happening. And it's just really hard to do. Mm-hmm. And so focus, consistency, do one thing really well, and work on the other elements of your life. And that's the key for success, in my opinion.
What was your first ever gig in TV?
So I did a TV show on my own in Canada, which was a nightmare and a disaster. And
like your own, like self,
my own self thing,
course, naturally,
self-funded,
it's gonna be a lot of work. Yeah,
just a disaster. Couldn't sell it. Like, and again, you can't look at my life and look at my journey as you're looking at a highlight reel, not at a treasure. It's not a treasure map, right? It's like you're looking at my highlight reel. So you can't look at that as your pattern. So I spent all my money. I was living in my parents' basement with my 2-year-old son, married with nothing and trying to make this TV show work. And my parents are like, you got to get a job, man. Like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, oh, it's just going to be, I took a meeting in the United States. One producer was willing to give me a meeting. It's kind of exploded. NBC bought the show.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody at that time, reality TV wasn't as like, it had just sort of started. So nobody knew who I was or where I came from. There was no sort of pedigree necessarily to get in. So I kind of just faked my way in from that perspective. And then I just sort of like bashed my way through. So I got a job as a head of development of a company to develop TV ideas, right? And I got a 1-year contract, and I thought, well, by the end of the year, they'll realize that this didn't work out, but I'll have made more money in that year than we were making in 5 years in Canada. So I was like, meh, we'll just figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first year went by and it went pretty well. And the second year went by, it went really well. Then I got a new job and that went really well. And I sold more shows, and then I got a big, job, and then it just spiraled from there. And the next thing you know, I'm not faking knowing stuff. I actually know stuff,
Mm-hmm. And then by the time, you talked about getting let go from TLC, that at the time probably being like in your head, your biggest, failure at that point.
Yeah, devastating.
Devastating news to hear, obviously. Yeah. When you talk about, self-doubt versus situational doubt, were there any moments during that tenure where you thought like, oh, this isn't going to work out, this isn't going to sell, this isn't going to get over with everybody involved, but that at the same time you still pushed through?
Well, there's a little bit of that, like once you jump off the bridge or the cliff, there's only so many directions you can go, right? Like I had already moved my family to the United States. That job at TLC was very high paying job. So it's like, now I have a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It was more like the doubt, there's not a lot of choice, right? There's just not, I just got to go get another gig. I just got to go make the rounds. And the truth was, it's like getting fired as a head coach of a football team that's doing really crappy. Like, it's not like those guys don't get new jobs. Like, that's just the industry, right? Like, so it worked out really well, but I was also able to perform. That's the other thing. Like, I sold a ridiculous amount of TV shows. Like, that skill happened to be incredibly in demand. So I got really sort of lucky, fortunate. It took me years and years and years to be an overnight success, right? Like, that's the way it works. And so at that point, it was like the fear of not having success in that was very palatable, but the options to sort of wallow in it were zero, right? Mm-hmm. And again, the delusional optimism helped. Every meeting I took, it was exciting. And I got lots of stuff going on, and oh my God, I'm just deciding what to do, and I'm getting lots of offers. And there's an attitude about that works. Yeah. And so I got really sort of fortunate through that process.
So when we talk about the book, The 3-Minute Rule,
baby,
you can get Amazon all over the place.
Yeah, you can get it anywhere.
When did you realize, like, when did you narrow it down? It's like, okay, 3 minutes, even less if you can, really, to really
there is some science. Over. There's some science too. So the idea is that everything about your business, product, or service must be conveyed clearly, concisely, and accurately in 3 minutes or less. And if you don't do that, your odds of convincing your audience to your way of thinking plummet because they are already making a yes or no decision in their mind. And anybody listening knows if someone come to pitch or sell or want you to do something, you probably make that initial yes or no in the first 30 seconds, sometimes 10 seconds. And it's because your brain processes information very systematically. Ironically, it's very systematically, whether it's a decision to go to war or kill your husband or what shirt you're wearing. It's the same decision process. Yeah. You conceptualize it, you contextualize it, then you actualize it. So I have to understand what it is that I'm looking at. I have to understand how it's going to affect me. That's actualization or conceptualization. Then you contextualize it for you. And then it's like, okay, what are my actions I'm going to do? And so what we found in television is that the scenes that we were cutting and editing had to be resolved within 3 minutes. Otherwise, people just lost the context. They lost they had already made up their mind what they wanted this scene to be. And so as I did a lot more research, you found that sort of brain pattern of how we make decisions is similar in everything and in every industry. And so developing that, we're like, hey, if you can put your pitch or presentation into these structures, you can get the most amount of value to a person before they start deciding whether they're interested or not. Mm-hmm. And the idea that people have been trying to do in the sales world is overcoming objections. And it's like, you want to learn to overcome objections? Like, why are you getting objections? Mm-hmm. Like, You don't have objections. You're the one pitching it. You're the one who works for the company. You're the one who started this. So you must like it. You must be able to see the value. You must see why it's good. You've made the decision to dedicate your time and energy to selling or producing or wanting this. Why wouldn't they want that? Why wouldn't they see that? And the reason they don't see this is because you haven't explained it in a way, in a value proposition, in a format that they understand it.
Mm-hmm.
It's, if you watch your favorite movie, my favorite movie, Shawshank Redemption, if you watch that movie, it's like, you want Andy Dufresne to escape from the prison. No, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. But
right.
Like, there's nobody watches that movie and is like, nah, I hope he gets killed in prison.
Right.
Right. So how do we do that in Hollywood? How do we make every single person in a good movie, obviously, every single person wants the same thing coming up to that scene? How is that possible? Right. All different backgrounds, everybody with different experiences. Like, no, because storytelling is universal. We've filled in the information. The conclusion is pretty obvious. He's got to escape from that prison. So pitching or presenting is the same structure, storytelling. I want you to understand that my investment opportunity is a good opportunity. I want you to understand that this app will help you as a horse owner, if you're traveling, find a place to keep your horse like Airbnb does for people, right? Like, I want you to understand that and the value of it. So if I put that in a story that lets you build your foundation of understanding, you will see the value. Now, you may not want to invest in it. You may not want to buy into it. That's not an objection. That's called reality.
Yeah.
Right. And so I train people to give the audience the information in a format, in a structure that helps the audience understand it effectively. And you just sell more and it just works out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just works out better. There's just no other way around it.
That is 1,000% a skill people have to learn too, right? Because like anybody, like a fourth grader could have like a project that he has for school and be like, oh, I think this is awesome. But you're looking at it from that objective only, that perspective. Right. Like, I think this looks awesome, but you have to make something that you think everybody can relate to.
Yes. And at the end of the day, it's just like, you can't skip through people's process of understanding. You understand your product, business, or service perfectly, every nuance. Yeah. Well, that's because you've been working with it for how long, right?
Exactly.
Your audience comes in cold. So it's like, I just need to breadcrumb you into the understanding, piece by piece by piece. And one of the things I have to tell my clients all the time is, I promise you'll get to say that. Like, they love their facts and figures. I promise you'll get to say that. Just not in the first 3 minutes, because we need to get people to understand the other sides of it first, right? Mm-hmm. And I joke all the time, it's taken me 20 years to learn how to say things in 3 minutes or less, because it's just not easy. And even when I wrote the book, the forward of the book, I want it to be 3 minutes long and be like, hey, I've only got 3 minutes to make you want to read this book, right? Like, what a great idea. And business books, the average business book reader reads only the first 4 pages of the forward before he decides if he's going to read it, which is coincidentally 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
So 4 pages, no problem. I go to write it. I took a vacation to write the forward. The book had already been written, and the publisher was like, write the forward after the book's all done, and that way you'll know everything. And so I took a vacation. I was so happy. The book was locked. I got 2 weeks in Jamaica. I'm like, great. I'm going to take a couple days, write the forward, and then I'm just going to enjoy myself. My first pass was 14 pages long. 14. I'm the guy who wrote the book about how to simplify your information and make it simple and easy and cut it down. And my first pass was 14. My second pass was 12. I got it to 7 on that trip in 2 weeks. Couldn't do it. I could not get my own information down because I loved it. I loved the book. I loved everything I said. And I remember negotiating with myself, well, maybe what I'm saying in this forward is so valuable and so smart and so important that it needs more than the 3 minutes this time. And I was like, what? So I had to go back home, start again, get my Post-its out, restructure everything, and finally got it to the 4 pages. And even then, I still think there's at least 1 and probably 2 paragraphs I could have cut out. As I read it today, I know that the first, I had pushed things. I loved things so much that I pushed it into the first chapter because I didn't want to delete it because it was so smart and so amazing to me. Anyways.
Exactly. Yeah. You're like, we can say like you're your own worst critic, but at the same time, you love your shit more than anybody else loves it. Oh my God. Like at the end of the day, like nobody really gives a shit about what you're doing. So like really simplify it to the things that you know are absolutely important.
Oh my God. Nobody loves your stuff as much as you do. That's right.
Like nobody gives a shit, guys. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Yeah. I mean, they just want to know.
Selling, so
they just want to know. Can you just tell me what this is and how this works? Like that's the first thing people want to know. Nobody wants to be pitched. Nobody wants to be sold. Just tell me what it is. Just tell me how it works. Good. Then we can talk. And if I like it, we can talk more. And your 3-minute meeting can turn into an hour, right? As they do.
At the end of the day, are you providing value or are you not?
Right.
You know?
And everything about it. It conveys confidence. A guy who speaks clearly, concisely, and doesn't use a bunch of extra words and doesn't try to sell you, that guy's got to have something going on. That's the confidence that person must have, right? Because otherwise you'd be trying to sell me.
Yeah. When writing this book, is it difficult? Obviously, writing, I don't think is very difficult for you. I feel like that's second nature too.
Yeah.
But obviously, simplifying it, working with a publisher, working with everybody from the business side, getting it out there, is it difficult?
Compared to TV, it was the greatest experience ever. It was so soft and so easy. Like the way they do it is you write 2 chapters and then you send it in and then they send it around to everybody. And then they basically say, okay, keep writing. You're in a good space. We'll deal with this later. Hey, we need to restructure a couple things. Let's rewrite these 2 chapters, or hold on, let's stop everything and let's regroup because we got to figure something else out, right? It's kind of the 3 options. What's interesting about the book world is like, I'm used to pitching, right? Everybody in Hollywood kind of knows me. I walk into a room, they kind of know you're going to get a good pitch about something, right? I have a bit of a dynamic. I have a bit of a reputation, and I'm good at what I do in the room. And so for me, it's always been the idea plus me equals value. In the book world, you are irrelevant. They don't care about you. They don't take meetings normally. What's on the page is the only thing that counts. And for me, that's terrifying because it's like, you just took one of my superpowers, right? And so it took me, it probably took me 4 months to write the first 2 chapters, which it should have taken me 4 weeks. But I just was so nervous about sending it in and being like, I didn't want them to get the first 2 chapters and then be like, whoa, like who bought this? You know, because it's a very large advance, and like there's a lot of risk on their part, and it was based on a book proposal and meeting me, and so I was so nervous about that. And so when I finally sent it in, my publisher called back and they're like, "Hey, we like it. You're going in the right direction. Don't worry about these 2 chapters, the notes on these yet. We'll get to those later. Keep going. You're in a flow." So that was incredibly good news, right? I was very happy about that. I felt like I had achieved the first sort of phase where because they send it to 40 different people. Those people don't know me. They've never met me. They're only reading the first 2 chapters and then they say, this sucks or not, right? So they obviously thought it was good enough to keep going. Oh, thank God. Right. So I keep writing. Well, then I get a email from the publisher saying, here are the notes on the first 2 chapters. I wouldn't worry about these right now, but we'll talk about these later. Okay, great. So I don't really think much of it. Then like a few hours later, he writes and he says, hey, I just want you to know that we really do like what you're doing. I don't want you to take the notes in the wrong fashion. I didn't want you to think we didn't like them. Like, we really do like what you're doing. It's just, this is the notes process as it is. So it's like, don't be discouraged once you read the notes. I'm like, what? Oh my God. What did he write? Oh God. So I literally am on the 405. I pull off to the side of the road. I connect my laptop to my cell phone and tethered. And I've got to pull up these notes, right? And the notes from him are, this is an excellent start. I wonder if we could expand this a little bit. Oh, like this chapter really doesn't lead us anywhere. I wonder if we could condense this one. Yeah. How about we start with this? This is an excellent, like they were so soft. And he had rewritten some stuff, rewrote this paragraph. Tell me if you like this. Like he edited it where he like helped move things around. And I was just like, what the hell did I just watch? Yeah. So I called him and I said, listen, Brock, I want you to know something. Like the first note I got on Bar Rescue, arguably one of the most successful shows I've been involved in, the first note from the network when we send the first pilot in was, this is the worst piece of shit I've ever seen. Do you even know how to make television? That was literally the note we got. That is not an exaggeration. That's what we dealt with in Hollywood.
Yeah, so your brain is trained. Like you get those notes from the author. You're thinking like, well, he's just going to say I'm a piece of shit. He's going to tear the over.
Yeah. And whereas in television, the notes come back and are like, this sucks. Redo this. Why did you film it this way?
No detail as to why.
No. And be like, no one cares about this. Redo it. Like it's awful. Whereas this guy's like, and I talked to him about that. He's like, well, that's what we do. Like I'm an editor. I help make this better. And I was like, oh my God, no network executive has ever made the show, help make the show better. Like, no, they do. Yeah. Anyways, I'm not going to bag on them, but yeah,
there's that bitterness.
And it was the same thing. Like when I finally delivered the book and it was all done, there was this moment where it was like, hey, we haven't decided when we're releasing it. You know, there's a few books in contention for the fall release, right? Like you might be getting it, but don't get your hopes up, right? It's like that's, you know, like a movie scene where it's like Princess Bride, where he's like, oh, hey, Wesley, how are you doing? Most likely kill you in the morning, right? That's what it's like. Hey, you know, you made the next round of cuts for the fall release, but don't get excited because it probably won't be you. It's probably a Bog Biger's book or whatever, right? So I kept going and eventually I got the fall release and they were like, congrats. And I was just like, I remember saying to him, like, I can't believe it. You guys must like it. He's like, and he was almost offended. He was like, what do you mean? Like, I've been telling you the book's good for the last 8 months. Why? Like, what's wrong with you? How insecure are you? Like, why were you waiting for this validation? Like, you don't believe me? This is what I do for a living. Like, it's a good book. We bought the book. We liked the book. Like, why are you so nervous about it? And it's because that imposter syndrome is very hard to shake. I'd never written a business book before. I'd never written any book. I don't read books. Like, so it's like, I never let myself get to the point where I felt like I really nailed it. And, you know, eventually you get to the point, but it's very difficult. Yeah.
But you being in TV and learning that trait of like knowing your audience's perspective versus your own perspective, I feel like writing a book, you knew how to piece it together that would be appealing to an audience as opposed to yourself.
Like I convey ideas very cleanly. I write treatments and Bibles for TV shows, hundreds of them. So being able to convey the idea in a clean sort of illustrative manner is, you know, I have a very high level skill for that. So that helped a lot. And that's why I think the book's, you know, done relatively well and people seem to like it because it reads quickly, effectively. There's not a lot of fluff. The stories are pretty good, if I do say myself. So that was a good transition of skills. But even with that, I still felt inferior and that I wasn't good enough and that I was fooling people. So that's a guy who's transferring his skills directly into something related. You can imagine what it's like if you're starting out doing something new.
Did you feel that way when it came to like, let's say Bar Rescue or even like Biggest Loser, where it's like in the first season of Biggest Loser, weren't they like asking you guys to like paint over the restaurant logos and stuff? Because they didn't want to be like associated with it. And by season 5, you guys are at the White House and stuff. And it's like, oh, now everybody's on board with this.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, you know, the team that had produced it and sort of came up with a thing was very like a nervous for the network as well, where it's like, ugh, this could be gross, like figuratively and literally. And nobody wanted to be a part of it. And then once it's a success, everybody wants to be a part of it, right? That's sort of the way, like I said, it's like, it takes a long time and a lot of work to be an overnight success. Like everything looks easy. And like I talk at the schools, like do not look at someone else's success as a treasure map. Like it doesn't work like that. Like you're just seeing the best parts and you're seeing the result and the stuff that goes in there. And it's like, you can't take my route to get to success in Hollywood. Nobody else could take that same road. It was just, and I wouldn't wish it on you because it was miserable for a lot of it. Like it's very difficult and a lot of hard work and a lot of anguish and a lot of like, it's just not fun. Right. And there's a faster, easier, more direct way to do what I did. And if I had done it that way, I would have been 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like, I wouldn't change anything, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a 19-year-old comparing themselves to Billie Eilish, being like, "Well, she's here. Like, how come I'm here? Like this, you know? You can't do that to yourself."
No. And it's just like I asked the kids in the class, like, do you guys think if you whatever you put your mind to, you'll be able to do? And they all put their hands up. And it's like, okay, well, could you be the next Taylor Swift? And some of them are like, yeah, I could. I was like, no, you can't. Like, guaranteed. Are you going to be the next LeBron James? It's like, if I really wanted to, it's like, no, you can't. That's not the way the world works.
Yeah.
And it's like the success level of those things that are like highly coveted industries is like, it's impossible. You know what you could do? You could be an incredibly wealthy and super successful electrician and run an electrician company because like the competition of that is smaller and easier. And you could do that and be a multimillionaire. You could go to McDonald's. And if your goal was to be a multimillionaire in 10 years, you could start at McDonald's at 22 years old, graduate college, and by 32, you'd have your own store, be a multimillionaire. And all you'd have to do is show up on time, be a little bit eager, do a little bit more work than the bare minimum, just a tiny bit more than the bare minimum. And you could retire by the time you're 38 years old, a multimillionaire, and have passive income for basically the rest of your life. And it's like, that is a very real opportunity for most of the people in America today at McDonald's or other fast food or any kind of job where it's like, you could just go do a really good job at something and do it well. And the world becomes a massive opportunity. One of my biggest in the book, right? One of my partners runs a plumbing company and he just sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. A plumbing company.
Right.
And you know what he did for the last 25 years? Plumbing company stuff. And he did it really well. And it's like, it's not even nationwide. It's not even the biggest. It's just, he did it really well. He focused, you know? It's like, and
everybody needs it.
Right. Whereas, you know, my old assistant who just got out of college, one of the greatest people who ever worked for me, you know, he's now 33 years old, still in entertainment, still pushing the rock up the hill, trying to make it. Whereas people that he graduated with went into crappy jobs at the bank or did wealth management or whatever. And now those guys were putting in 10 years in an industry with a little bit straighter line to success are doing amazing. Whereas entertainment industry is like, you don't know when good things, it's random. It's like trying to play in the NFL. It's like you could, or you could not, or you could get hurt one year and then it slows you down, or you take a bad job and then those companies, like it just, the higher the level of profile, the more exciting and sexy and cool the job is, the more competition, the more risk. It's like, when people ask me how to get entertainment, I'm like, don't go the opposite direction.
Like
turn around and go the other way.
It looks good. It doesn't feel good.
No.
Or like taking a crappy job at like a financial company or working in sales for like a tech company or something doesn't look great out of school. But like you said, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, you're pretty set.
Right. And that's why I say, like, you want to be a writer? Like, okay, go get a real job and then write. And then write. You know what writers do? They write. You know, and that's like, people ask me, like, I had a person over the other day and she said, you know, with my connections, like, hey, could I be an actress in Hollywood? I was like, no, you can't. And she was so offended.
Any experience?
No, but just thought like with a couple of connections, she could get started because she really wants. I was like, you don't really want to because you're 30 something years old.
Yeah.
And if you really wanted to, you would have done it before. And if you weren't doing it before, it's because you didn't have the drive. And without the drive, you'll never make it. You'll never make it. Because the amount of shit you have to go through, the mud and
the grit too.
The grit of it is so unpleasant that unless you're so committed, you'll never get there. And even if you had that, the odds of you getting there are not. I'd be like, go do something else. Go do something else and do it for fun here and there. Go. But that's the thing. Like, you want to be an actor. Like, okay, well, are you doing plays on the side? Are you writing your own plays? Are you doing local theater? It's like, no. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't want to be an actress. You want the trappings and the success of being an actress. You want to be cool and fun and do cool shit, but you don't want to do any of those things. Because you know what actors who really want to be actors do? They take acting class and they go do dumb plays and the thing. And like, if you're not in that mode and you're not incredibly good, and then you're not going to be.
Yeah. No, I mean, you have to go through, like, she should have started when she was like 18, 19, maybe even younger, and doing stuff like for free or virtually for free, right?
Yeah, it's a go to your local church, do a little play, like go do some acting stuff and then come back to me and be like, yeah, I love acting. It's the only thing I want to do. It's like, okay, well, I guess I can get you an introduction with an agent, but like,
exactly.
Other than that, it's like, you just want to be, and that happened to me. One of my closest friends, my mentor was a guy named Stephen J. Cannell, was one of the greatest writers of all time, you know, one of the greats. And I said to him, Steven, I want to be a writer just like you. And I was expecting him to be like I would be if someone said that to me, you know, like, oh, thank you for saying that, you know? And he was just like, no, you don't. And I was like, what do you mean I don't? I just poured my heart out, tell you that I want to be like you.
Yeah.
And he's like, you don't want it. No, you don't. Because you know what writers do? They write. What have you been writing? Nothing. You don't want to be a writer. If you did, you'd be writing.
Yeah.
I get up at 4:30 every morning and I write. And I was like, oh man, he's right. I want to be a writer at the end.
You want the successes. You don't want everything else that comes with it.
I don't want anything else that comes with it.
Now, when in that moment, let's say you didn't have like a specific goal in mind, or like you thought that was your goal, right? And then you kind of come to the realization when someone smacks you in the face, basically like, oh, I don't want to do this. What do you say to people that find that realization and don't really have any other backup plan? Like, that was the thing that they kind of had their brain set on, but.
Well, you would know because you're either doing the work to get there or you're doing the image of the work to get the success and the final project. Yeah. You want to be the final project. You want to own But I did this. I literally did this. I started a bar and restaurant because I wanted to run a bar and restaurant at the time when I was 20 something years old. I thought it was cool. Like most people. By the way, that's how bar rescue. I was the guy needing rescuing.
Yep.
So I did this. I started a bar and restaurant. And what did I want? Did I want to operate that business? Did I want to be a bar owner, or did I want the success of doing it? Because what I didn't do was go to hotel and restaurant management school. What I didn't go was go work in restaurants for years to learn the business. I didn't go ask someone to mentor me in the process. I didn't do any of that. I just raised some money, bought a place, and put a cool menu and put it together. And it's like, which one are you? Are you the guy with enough skill to go start a bar and restaurant on your own without having done it before? Great. I did that. I had enough skill and I did that. Yay. Guess what? It failed. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it's like, once you get the place open and done, now all your cool, amazing skills to get it done without all the background is over. Now you're competing.
Yep.
Right? Like if I went to the Lakers tryout and I had a great day and shot 3-pointers and never missed a shot, maybe they put me in a game. And it's like, okay, great. Like you skipped the line and you just showed up there. Well, guess what? Now you have to play in the NBA every day and with real guard. And like, now I'm a restaurant, just like every other restaurant. And now I'm competing against the guys who spent their entire lives developing restaurants and run restaurants. And guess what happens? All your skill goes right out the window. And that's like, you want to be an actress? Okay. Can I get you? Like, yeah. But if you don't do the work, then all you have is, I just have to be incredibly lucky and bump into a casting director at Starbucks and be like, okay, sure, that could happen.
Yep.
It happens to people. It's Harrison Ford.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? You could be the one in a bazillion. If you want to bet your life on that, good luck.
Still got to put in the work though. It's
That's
like the climb up is an insane challenge, but once you get to the top of the mountain, you have the work to stay there is increasingly more difficult.
Yeah, it's just, again, the bar restaurant analogy is amazing. Oh, hey, you got a little bit of money, you're going to go open a bar? You're never going to make it.
Oh, the food industry?
Yeah, the odds of, because the
people
competition.
Who have wanted to do that since they were 5 years old have difficulty doing
and it's like, you want to come and produce television? Like, really? Like, it's really hard to do, right? Like, if you don't go through the process, the odds of you getting to be as successful or as being able to develop at the same level as the people who do this for a living all the time is basically none, right?
What do you say to people who, again, want their lifestyle to look good as opposed to like living the lifestyle that is actually going to fulfill them and make them happy? Because obviously you working in the entertainment industry for as long as you did had its ups and downs. You probably had a lot of moments where you're like, this is everything that I ever dreamed for. You had validation, but obviously the client, you mentioned like the pushing the rock up the hill, insanely difficult most of the time. And there's 9 times out of 10, you're probably thinking, is this all going to be worth it? And then there's moments where, it was worth it. But you eventually come to the realization where, like you said, you barely post on social media. You know? It's like, I'm actually enjoying my life. What do you say to like young people like that?
I mean, this is not a popular opinion, I don't think. But the truth is, like, what actually is better for you? Like, if let's say your life is in a little bit of shambles and you're struggling and you're not where you want to be, but in your social media profile, everything looks great, right? And what you're portraying to the world is great. If you're not actively doing something that damages you or your future by making everything look great, then like, isn't that a good system? Like, what's your other option? Like having your real life reflected everywhere and reinforcing the fact that you don't feel where you're supposed to be, or that you're not as successful as you thought you were, or things aren't going your way, or you're being left behind, or other people are doing better, or you can't afford the things that other people can. Like, do you think wallowing in that and embracing that is better for you? Or is the visualization and the optimism and the pushing that everything's great and everything's awesome? I mean, I think there's obviously a fine line between the sort of the push of that and the reality. If you're completely faking stuff and you're photoshopping crap to try to make like, okay, that's obviously not what I'm talking about. But in general, and I say this on stage, I have one of my things where I say to people in my marketing thing, I say, I am not as rich, famous, or successful as you think I am. That's just a fact. And nobody else is either. That's the way the world really is.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are just like, oh, and it's like, yeah, that's, you know what I mean? Like people assume things about me because of my persona. It's like, I like the assumptions you have and I cultivate that. But as I get older and a little bit less concerned with that, I'm okay sort of like pulling the curtain back a little bit, you know, like, but I don't have problems with people making their lives look as good as they possibly can. I think you're probably more likely to find happiness or satisfaction in that direction if you portray that out front first. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I just feel that way because I think if you embrace the misery, I think you will find more misery. Mm-hmm. That's what I think. Mm-hmm. You know,
I mean, grit is 1000% important in chasing your goals, right? Yeah. Like you said, you are not an overnight success. You're like a 15, 20 year overnight success, right? Yeah. Like either way, it's like you're going to have to put in the determination and get through those shitty times and get there. Yeah. But at the same time, you also have to come to the realization, like, is this going to make me happy at the end of the day? Or am I just like doing this to
It's just good? Hard. Like, and there is, you know, and I know there's lots of guys that talk about this, but there's a level financially where all that stuff, money doesn't buy you happy. All that stuff is all like, it's all horse shit to a point, right? Like people who are genuinely broke and really struggle for their paychecks, like that is the most important focus, right? I get that. But at some point really quickly, when you reach a level where most of the things are the same, you have a car with power, every car has power windows and air conditioning. Like if you can buy a new car, it doesn't matter if it's a Hyundai, or a Toyota or a Lexus or a Mercedes. They're all incredibly similar, right? There's a little bit, but once you get the basics of those things covered, after that, it becomes like just chasing stuff, which I'm all about. Don't get me wrong. But there was a very big incident in my life. Very wealthy partner of mine. The first time I met him, it was business related. He's on the edge of billionaire, maybe a billionaire today. We go to his house in the Hollywood Hills. It literally looks into Jennifer Aniston's backyard. It's the most spectacular home I've ever seen in my life. The view and the deck, just beyond comprehension. And so when I'm there the first time, I'm keeping it together. Not Googling, ogling everything in there, no googly eyes. Just professional. Yes, Greg, this was, but the corner of my eye, I'm like, oh my God. So we become more friendly. We're in business together. I'm over at his house again. Now out come the googly eyes. Like, Greg, you gotta show me this house. Yeah. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing. Oh my God. So he takes me on a tour. It is so outrageous. I mean, it is so outrageous that we go onto the deck. You can feel yourself in the lounge chairs looking out over at the sea and the Hollywood sign. You can feel like we walk into the master bedroom with this ridiculous view, glass on three sides, this huge, unbelievable fireplace, a big bed. And you can feel yourself waking up in the morning, feeling rested and happy. And you're smiling. Like you can see what your life is in that house. And it's better than the life you have now. Like you have a better sleep. The kitchen, you're going to make better food. Like, it's this amazing theater. You're going to watch movies and candy. Like, you can feel your life get unbelievable. And I remember when I said to him, I was like, oh my God, this is the most spectacular bedroom ever. And he turned to me and he turned right into me so I could see his face. Yeah. And he was just shrugged off and goes, yeah, it's all good. So it's fine. Right. And he just shrugged it off. Like it was no big deal. Mm-hmm. And it hit me so hard because the week before I had these two guys from the East Coast were big fans in the book and they'd started a podcast and they were sending me messages and they wanted to interview me so badly and they were in town and I was just like I'm not driving into Los Angeles to do your podcast. And they were so excited they were in town and I felt so bad. And I was like, you know what, guys, why don't you come out to the house and you could interview me here? And they were like, what? You're inviting us to your house? I was like, yeah, come on out to the house. And I decided I'll make dinner for you and we'll do a whole thing. And it's gonna be nice. These guys have been so fan and it'll be a good experience for them. And I like that kind of stuff. So they come out to the house and they're just so excited. And I'm giving them a tour of my house. And we're out in the yard and they're just like, oh, you have horses? Oh my God. They just never seen anything they're just so excited. And I remember them looking at me, this is the most amazing thing ever. And I said to them, yeah, it's all right. And I remember thinking to myself when Greg did this is if you can't be happy and overwhelmed in that $3 million house. When you get, God willing, the $30 million house that he has, you will feel the same way. You will, if you don't train yourself to appreciate all of those pieces along the way, those will get thrown out, and I will be Greg and you will be me. And those kids will be me in their house one day. If they get a $3 million, they will be like, yeah, it's fine. It's normal, right?
Yeah.
And so that is very difficult for people to understand, that you can just become ambivalent about everything in your life so fast. And so at 23 years old, it's like, don't let that start. Like, don't let that start. Like, look where you are. You know what I mean? Like, that should be a sort of daily thing, is like, it's appreciation, but it's more like, just like, it's awesome. Like, you have to believe that this is going to be a spectacular day because it's awesome. And you'll find you'll have more days like that.
It's like the grass is greener on the other side when it comes to everybody. Like, someone's got to. It's like everybody's just kind of like, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. The grass is exactly what you think it is when you're in it. That's it. And it's just like, it's like climbing a mountain. It's like, you think you're at the top of the mountain, you get to the top, oh my God, there's another peak over there. It's the same thing. Like, you have to get in the process of that level of appreciation and understanding and being like, I love this. This is amazing. And you have to do that every day. If Greg had got that house and every day went through the same thing he went through when he first got it, which is like, oh my God, I love this, he'd still be in love with it.
How do you practice gratitude then? Like, is there like a step-by-step process that you kind of like retrain your brain every day to like get into that great space?
Yeah, I did it on a sort of a micro level. I started, the first step was, it's a ridiculous story, but my partner, the plumber guy in the book, he had rented a Lamborghini to take his kid to school on graduation day. And we happened to be having a party at the house for the kids. So he had the Lamborghini. He came to the house. It was the afternoon. Kids are playing. And I had forgotten I had a meeting in Burbank. And it was like one quick meeting and I had totally forgotten. And he was pulling in to go to the party. I was like, I got to go to Burbank and like go do this stupid meeting. I'll be back in like an hour and a half. And I was like, wait, you're going to be here the whole time? He's like, yeah. I was like, well, let me take the Lamborghini. I'll drive that to the meeting. He's like, all right. So I drive the thing. And I'm driving it and I call him within about 15 minutes and I go off. This is the stupidest car I've ever been in. This is such a piece of crap. I can't believe people, this is so dumb. Like, every time I've been in one, this is the worst one I've ever been in. This is awful. It's so small. It's janky. It's noisy. It doesn't have any, it's not much faster than my car. My car is fast. This is not that much faster. Like, who would buy this? Oh, I'm only in this car so that other people see it. And like, and I just go on for 20 minutes. It's a funny rant. I go to the meeting, the valet's all excited about the car and he mentions it. And I'm just a piece of crap, you know? And as I'm heading back home, I'm in traffic and I get this wave of like, what am I doing? Like, what an idiot. Like, and so I just got this idea of like, no, that is not, like, cause I think it affected my attitude. Like, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I can project that attitude to the valet guy. And so as I was driving home I remember it like I was on the 170 coming back home from Burbank. And I remember thinking like, that is such a terrible attitude. What, that's awful. I'm changing my tune right now. And I put both hands on the wheel and I just started saying to myself like, I can't believe I get to drive a Lamborghini today. I don't even have to buy it. I have a friend that's willing to lend me his, this is amazing. I'm in Los Angeles. Like, I can't believe I get to drive this car. This is and I just kept saying that over and everything that's going on. I'd be like, I can't believe this is my life right now. This is amazing. Like, people would die to be in this car. And I can't believe I get to drive. What a great day. And I just kept doing that over and over again. And when I got home, I actually felt like that. Car's still a piece of crap, but I actually felt like I'm so happy today. I feel so grateful. It's like, this isn't even my car. I got to drive it. It's amazing, right? So I thought, well, I got to do that more. So the next morning, as I'm walking to feed my horses, I have this big property, and it's like I just stopped and I was like, I can't believe this is my house. I can't believe this is my house. Not like appreciation of like I'm so like just like I can't believe this is where I get to live. I can't believe this. Like this is my yard. Like, and then I get there and I'd be like, I can't believe I have horses in my yard. This is crazy. This is so amazing. This is awesome. I'm so happy. And like, so I do that in 30-second increments. And it would come to me again and be like, I can't believe this is where I live. And I can't believe I get to go there. I can't believe I get to have lunch today at this restaurant. This is a great restaurant. And like, And so you find that instead of having to force yourself to do that, you start to do that more naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And your brain just becomes in that mode where you look at something and you're just like, this is great,
Right.
you know? And there's a scene, I don't know if your audience may be a little young for this, but there's a scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And if you haven't seen the movie, you got to go see it. And Damone, one of the lead character, is talking to Red about how he's supposed to deal with women on a date. He's like, everywhere you go, you got to act like this is the place to be.
This is the place to be.
This is the place to be. Isn't this great? Yeah. It's like if you develop that, you'll find that everywhere you go is the place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And initially you'll feel like you're faking it and you're pretending. And some people can never get past that. Like my wife could never get past that idea. It's just like, you're pretending? Like that doesn't make sense. And a lot of people will be the same way. Oh, you're faking it. You're pretending. Like for me, it's projecting. Like everywhere I am, everything I'm doing is always the place to be. And it's the thing to be doing. And it's amazing. And whether it is, the facts of that are irrelevant.
Yeah.
Facts have no bearing on that process.
Man, well, I think this is the place to be right now here.
That's my boy right there.
I appreciate you guys coming into the studio today.
Dude, anytime.
You guys have a 4-hour drive back.
Yeah,
so
man.
I will let you guys get to it. Buy the book, The 3-Minute Rule, guys. Where can we find it?
Amazon, you can go to 3minuterule.com. You can go to brantpinvidic.com. It's around.
And then you guys follow him at Brant Pinvidic on so all social media,
basically
Instagram,
all socials, yeah.
all over the place. This was episode 620 of the podcast, guys. Check it out.